Hello and welcome to mini episode number 430 of Real Life Ghost Stories. And I have 4 spooky stories for you today. And the last story comes from the 5th of December 2024. And story number 1 comes from Terry. It's Christmas morning 2023 and we woke up at around 6:30 a.m. So our sons, aged 7, 11 and 14 at the time, could get up to open their presents. As usual, there was the usual surprise, disappointment and gratitude in equal measures. As the gifts were being opened and inspected, I used my phone to take pictures of the occasion as we always have. I had taken the first of my wife and my eldest son, turned and took the second, with our youngest and his new blue bicycle. As I prepared to take a third, the second of our youngest, I noticed something in the screen of my phone. It was a slow-moving, milky-coloured orb, yet there was nothing visible to the naked eye when I looked up. I checked the screen again, and there it was, still moving as I snapped it. I immediately knew what it was, but said nothing, as it may have freaked my wife and kids out so early on a Christmas morning. Making my excuses, I left the room to make coffee and checked the photos in the kitchen. It was there that I noticed the orb above my older boy, then lower down on the photo of the youngest, before moving in a flash as I realised what it was. I have to say I was not frightened, as I have had some supernatural experiences before. I later showed them to my wife, who was not really bothered by them. However, when I showed them to my mother, who came with my dad for dinner around midday, she believed it was the spirit of my wife's mother, who had died earlier the previous year. She loved Christmas, and it was like something she would do, visiting her grandsons on Christmas morning just to enjoy their excitement one last time. We had moved into the house just over 4 years before, and I can honestly say it was the first such experience of anything out of the ordinary I'd witnessed. I've since shown the pictures to the previous owner, asking if they had ever had such a visitor, and she said they hadn't. I wonder if we'll have a repeat this year. And just to say that Terry did include pictures, and there are undeniably orbs in those 3 pictures. They're undeniable. It's not like you're looking at it going, oh, is that an orb or is that a speck on the camera? It's an orb, right? They look like orbs. They are clearly moving, whatever. And I do always think that orbs are a really interesting phenomenon, right? And there are some elements of, or some aspects of stories about orbs where you think, yeah, it's clearly just dust or an insect or whatever. But in this case, and especially because the orbs that are shown are kind of, they're white or silvery. And I went down a bit of a rabbit hole looking up what different orbs mean. And apparently the colour white usually symbolises purity. So some believe that white orbs represent the presence of a guardian angel. And that some people believe that these white or silver orbs, they're always positive, but they're there to offer protection for the living. And I that seems to make sense with with your mum's explanation of it being the spirit of your mother-in-law, because of course Christmas is such a special time, and such a special time for families and kids, and it's such a time that can bring so much joy. So it makes sense that your mother-in-law would want to drop in and see her grandkids. And I think that's a really, really beautiful thing. So on my rabbit hole about orbs, I was looking up what all the different orbs mean. So apparently, if you see a clear orb, like a bubble, I suppose, it indicates that a spirit is trying to communicate with you. If you see a white orb, like we said, it's believed to be a guardian angel or some sort of protective spirit. If you see a black, grey or a brown orb, this might indicate that the area is unsafe or holds negative energy. Some believers also associate these colours with evil, but this view isn't widely accepted. Some paranormal investigators believe that this is a spirit trying to warn you of something, which is interesting. Red orbs could indicate safety and security. The colour red spiritually is associated with safety and security, but also it could be an agitated, restless spirit. Orange orbs are quite similar in nature. Some people think that orange orbs are protectors and that the spirits may have been caretakers during their life. Green orbs are said to represent healing, nature, prosperity. They're said to be the spirit of a human, and that they are representative of love and that they appear when somebody really needs them, really needs to see it. Blue orbs, again, calming energy, psychic energy and truth. And then you've got yellow orbs, and yellow is a positive colour. The world of orbs and their meanings is really interesting. And if you're somebody who has experienced orbs, have a look at online what it says about it. And actually, what I thought was really interesting is that the website said, you know, if you experience orbs, have a just think about the energy that you're feeling in the room. Does it feel positive? Does the room feel calm? Are you feeling scared? And that might give you an indication as to what the orb itself might represent. And story number 2 comes from Ari. Our house is old, built in the mid-50s, and has had several renovations over the years. And to put it quite frankly, I'm convinced it's haunted. It's old, creepy, and still looks like it belongs in the Victorian era. Now, as I've said before, my dad and I have always been particularly in tune with our sixth sense and love the paranormal, just not when it's in our house. The first story I'm about to share happened maybe a week ago. I was heading downstairs to our basement to do my laundry, but when I entered the room, the door to the crawl space was wide open, which in and of itself is creepy as heck. I truly believe our crawl space belongs in a horror movie. We only use it for storage, and the only person in the family actually brave enough to go down there is my dad. Anyway, I was down there, saw the crawl space door was open, and closed it. Simple. I came back about an hour later to switch the load to dryer, and the crawl space is open again, even though I previously locked it. I checked inside, making sure no one was in there before closing it again. After I came back up, I started asking my family if they'd gone into the crawl space, to which everyone denied, and I was left extremely confused and a bit unsettled. By now, I was already getting that gut feeling when you just know something isn't right. I didn't even want to go down to the basement later that evening to feed my cats. I did, of course, feed them, but felt extremely uncomfortable and kept checking behind me just in case. When I was down there, I decided to check the crawl space, which, to no one's surprise, was unlocked again. I was totally freaking out, so I locked it, said a quick prayer, blocked the door with a bag of unopened flour, it was the heaviest thing I could find, and left. A few days later, I went back down to the basement because my 2 cousins, 5 and 3 years old, wanted to play video games on the Xbox we have down there. Everything was going fine until the younger one started pointing towards the laundry room where the crawl space is located, saying, "Who's that?" So of course I'm freaking out because this is the type of stuff that happens in horror movies. Little kid sees ghost is evil, ghost does bad things, and someone most likely dies. I asked him who he was talking about, and he just kept pointing towards the crawl space, saying, "Him, he's right there, he's looking at us." I eventually got too scared to be down there and took both of the boys upstairs after shutting down the game because I, for the most part, know when to trust my gut, which was currently telling me to get the heck out of there. So I took the 2 of them back upstairs and told my brother and dad about it. My brother went down there and came back up a few minutes later saying he didn't see anything, but that the crawl space door was open. I haven't gone down there since except to feed my cats, and I honestly have no desire to. I don't know what it is living there, but I know something is definitely up. And though I would love to investigate, I also do not want to end up angering whatever entity, if there even is one, that stays down there. Ari, I say this with the greatest of love and respect for you, but girl, you are living in a horror movie. Okay, this is how it all begins. You're like, oh weird, that hatch door, that crawl space. I mean, first of all, having a crawl space, fuck me. Oh, the weird, that crawl space door is open. That's not usually open. I better close it and lock it. Oh weird, it's back open again. Oh, so strange. Oh, the 3-year-old is saying, "Who's that? Who's that man standing at the crawl space?" Threateningly. So I know that your gut reaction, your intuition is like, no, I'm not going down there. I'm not taking that risk. But here's the thing, right? Here's what I would do if I were in your situation, because I'd be freaked as well. There's no point in denying it, right? I would be freaked. I would take a tape recorder. They usually have about 8 hours recording time. And I would bring it down to the crawl space. I would pop the recorder into the crawl space and I would say, "Hey, if there's something you would like to communicate with me, please do it into this little device." And then I'd close up the crawl space, leave it for 8 hours, go back down, get it, see if you picked up anything on the audio. And listen, okay, if you end up like living in The Conjuring, not my fault. Okay, I'm just making suggestions. It's up to you whether you take those suggestions or not. You know, they always talk about how like animals are, beacons. They're like lighthouses. They can tell you if there is an entity around. And there's that meme of the person carrying the cat in front of them down the stairs in the dark, being like, this is my ghost detector. I think you could do the same with kids. Put a kid on a lead. Some kids have harnesses, don't they? Put a kid on a harness, bring them into a haunted house. So to bring them into every room. The minute they start talking to the corner, you leave that house. And story number 3 today comes from Terry. I see on your website, no aliens. So I won't tell you the story of how my mom was followed home from work by something that hovered above her as she crossed the side road. And then scooted away as she headed up the hill and turned into the driveway, where my dad and grandpa stood watching. After, she became a born-again Christian. She never again talked about this experience, but I knew it from family lore. I believed it. Another time, the family was out driving. One of those terrible road trips in the 1970s with parents smoking in the front of the Oldsmobile and little me sleeping in the back of the car on a wool blanket. I woke up at one point and saw way up in the sky what I perceived to be a UFO. Not a plane. Cool. When I went to university, one night I was sleeping and suddenly woke up, rolled over and saw a bright light coming in my window. I could hear girls screaming and general ruckus, which I assumed was regular dormitory noise. Oh, I thought, a UFO, and went back to sleep. In the morning, one of the guys on the 3rd floor was asking me if I'd heard anything the night before. No. Seen anything? No. Like a light? Oh yeah, I suddenly remembered. I saw a light coming in my window. I just assumed it was a UFO and went back to sleep. He looked at me strangely and repeated, You assumed it was a UFO and went back to sleep? Yeah. Why? As it turns out, this guy was hanging a light, like a light bulb, on a long pole down from the 3rd floor in front of, or into, in my case, the window was open without a screen. The windows of the girls on the 3rd floor, terrifying them and creating havoc. This is what I heard and saw. I don't know. I just thought it was aliens. Listen, okay? The website says that I don't like aliens. It doesn't say no alien stories, okay? And look, can we not just pretend that all alien stories are just a guy with a light bulb on a stick? Oh, I saw a UFO in the sky last night. Are you sure it wasn't just a guy with a light bulb on a stick? Yeah, God, this big hovering orb followed my car home last night. Are you sure it wasn't just a guy with a light bulb on a stick? Oh, hook that to my veins, because that's going to be my answer to everything UFO related from now on. It's just a guy with a light bulb on a stick. That's all it was. I keep referencing the fact that I watched Signs again recently, and listen, it just reiterated the fact that I'm terrified of UFOs. And I don't know if I said this on the main pod, but I realised why I'm terrified of UFOs. It doesn't often happen, but I got to the actual root of my trauma and fear around UFOs and UFO stories. Fully realised what it was. And I'll do an episode about it, because it was a whole other story that I didn't realise that I had seen when I was too young, and then obviously internalised it and believed that aliens were going to come and abduct me in the middle of the night. And in regards to your ma, I just have to, if aliens follow me home, or if I see an alien spacecraft or whatever, you best believe I'm turning to God too, because I'm thinking, I got to cover all my bases here, okay? But it was probably just a fella with a light bulb on a stick anyway. And our final story today comes from Renee. I have a spooky story from Nashville. My family and I moved to Tennessee from Florida just about 3 years ago. It's a beautiful change of scenery, but cold as hell compared to Florida. So our whole transition was a very stressful time. We sold our pool service business, moved, started new jobs, and I had emergency gallbladder removal surgery. This all happened in the span of 4 months, so this could definitely be explained away as stress. I'm not going to argue that. We had some friends from Florida visiting us. It was early summer and beautiful. We spent a lot of time exploring downtown Franklin and Nashville in the evenings. Franklin is a small historic area and is known for the bloodiest battle of the Civil War, the Battle of Franklin. People say the whole area is haunted and you are literally walking on a battlefield. We went to dinner at a local burger joint called Jack Brown's. We were told to make sure to visit the bathroom, as it was an old bank vault that was converted. Sounds cool. So after we had our very tasty burgers, my friend had the Elvis, which is a cheeseburger with bacon and peanut butter. Sounds gross, but it is very good, but I digress. I excused myself to check out the vault restroom. I went by myself and it was so cool. It was small, 3 stalls, and I don't know why, but I went to the last stall. Not smart. The room was shaped like a narrow hallway, if that makes sense. Just weird. On the wall as I walked past, I noticed it looked like someone fixed a hole in the wall, and with drywall, so didn't do a good job, so it was noticeable. Then I went into the stall, and as soon as I started going, I had the most overwhelming feeling of dread followed by sadness. Then fear crept in, and I mean it was startling. I thought, what the fuck? So I couldn't wait to get out of there. My heart was racing, I started sweating, it was so crazy. I left the stall and the feeling of fear was worse. I was moving slowly because I was afraid to walk past the perch in the wall. I noticed the hole must have been big because the patch was the whole middle of the wall. I stopped and had to summon the courage to run past it. I washed my hands so fast and ran out like a bat out of hell. The restroom was not part of the actual restaurant. It was behind it, and I ran back to the restaurant door and to my table out of breath. And my husband and my friend said that I was pale and sweaty. I told them I wanted to leave, so we did. But I noticed as soon as I was at the table, the dread, sadness and fear thankfully were gone. It was only in that bathroom area. I was terrified and will not go back to that restaurant ever again. As somebody with a lifelong aversion to peanuts and peanut butter and anything peanut butter flavoured, that sounds absolutely vile. I wouldn't go back to that restaurant just by virtue of that burger alone. I'm joking, obviously. I would be so curious to know if that is a common thing in that restaurant toilet, that people go in and feel lots of feelings of sadness, fear, dread all of a sudden, or whether you are just particularly sensitive and maybe you hadn't realised that you were particularly sensitive and just being in that room triggered that sensitivity in you, or maybe there was an entity in there that was making you feel that way. It's so difficult to know, isn't it? And I think those Civil War battle sites, like, there's so much sadness, pain, anger, death, trauma that is all associated with those battlefield sites. So it makes sense to me that the whole town would be sort of pretty much haunted, you know? I feel like I'm being really rogue and reckless today, and I'm saying, girl, go back to that restaurant. Send somebody you don't particularly like into the bathroom and see do they have any sort of reaction, you know? Go with your coworker that annoys you and then be like, oh, I've heard the bathroom's really cool in here. Am I just a bad person? I think I might actually just be evil. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Thank you to Terry, Ari, Terry and Renee for sending in your stories. Remember, the last story came from the 5th of December 2024. And if you would like to send in your story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or $2 a month, you can get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.